Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt, on the radio, on Facebook, on YouTube, on podcasts, and on talklawradio.com. Today I'm talking with Jill Piazzi, the owner and operator of Gray Matters, an aging life care management company and consulting business serving mostly older adults, those with disabilities, and their loved ones in San Antonio and surrounding areas. She's a contractor for Bexar County and Alamo area agencies on aging under the Caregiver Support Program, plus a regular presenter with local nonprofits and adult learning programs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you for having me.
I'd like to ask you more questions about your bio.
Okay.
Tell us where you're from.
Well, I grew up here mostly. I was a military brat when I was real young, so I lived a lot of places up until 7. But I've lived here most of my life, and I've lived in Austin part of my career, 7 years in Austin. So, yeah,
Okay.
Texas mostly.
And who influenced you most growing up?
There's a number of people, mentors, but I'd say my mom, I think just with her community-mindedness and being involved in our church and giving back, which she still does today, you know, as a older woman.
Yeah.
She's still giving. And in fact, we served this past weekend for our Synod Assembly meeting. You know, I know you and I are both Lutheran. And
Right.
we served this past weekend in Corpus Christi for the ELCA Synod Assembly meeting to vote for our bishop.
That's
So
awesome.
We served together in different capacities. Yeah.
And it's going to be Mother's Day tomorrow.
I know. I'm a mother. My mom, you know, is of course a mother. I've got a mother-in-law. So celebrating moms that have children, but also those that have been mothers to many, right?
Right.
Some people aren't getting to be biological mothers, but they take care of other people. So want to have a shout out for all people that care for
That's
other
right.
people.
That's
Yeah.
right. Tell us something about your family.
Well, I am married. My husband, Frank, and I have been married for going on 8 years, so it's a remarriage. And I have a daughter, Corey, and she's a dog groomer, as I was telling you. So she's the dog person and loves her job, and she's on her own. So I'm an empty nester, and my mom is still alive. My dad just passed in January, and I was sharing with you, yeah, it's been kind of a tough road, but I think we all go through these times, right, where, you know, we think we're going to have people around forever, and it doesn't always work that way. But he had Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, so in my work, I work with clients with those conditions. It's different when it's our family, though, right? It's kind of, you know, you jump in and
Right.
help out, but it's, you know, it is tough. It is tough to be that caregiver and be supportive of the spouse that's the caregiver sometimes. So I have a brother also, so I'm the oldest of 2.
Okay.
But yeah, that's it. And I have family here in San Antonio. I have aunts and uncles, cousins.
Oh, that's great.
It's nice, yeah.
Big extended family.
Right, yeah.
I hope you have a good celebration for Mother's Day.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, we're going out to eat, so I won't have to cook, and nobody else is cooking, so
Right.
it's good. Yeah, thank you.
So you mentioned your caregiving help with the family. Tell us about your work and how you got into that.
Well, I started with an interest in aging at the age of 8. So in my neighborhood, there was a local nursing facility. It's now called Alamo Heights Health and Rehab, but at the time it was Hillside Manor. This is in the 70s.
Okay.
And so I was volunteering after school, weekends, summers, and I kind of just fell into it unexpectedly. But I fell in love with older adults and being able to serve. I got to do a lot of cool things. Got to feed older adults that couldn't see, read to people. I remember back in that time, there were payphones, so people in wheelchairs couldn't get their quarter in the payphone, so I'd help people make calls. I mean, I did a lot of different things. So my love for older adults started then. And then while I was in school, I studied aging, got my master's in gerontology, and been working with older adults for going on 33 years.
Wow.
Yeah, started right out of college as a social worker in nursing homes. So, yeah.
That's an interesting and a long and varied career.
Yeah.
You have some specialty training and some certifications. Tell us about that.
Okay, so I have I am what's called an Aging Life Care Manager. I'm an advanced professional through the Aging Life Care Association, which is a great group. If anybody needs a care manager, we're a national association, and we do have websites where people can find care managers. But I'm also, through that association, certified as a care manager. It's called a CMC, or Care Management Certified. And I got that years ago, and had a mentor during that time, because you have to be supervised as you're getting that certification. And when you're working on your own, you don't have a supervisor. So
Right.
I had a mentor who was an RN that has her own practice in Dallas. And so she was my mentor, went over case studies, and we went over client, situations, and talked about best ways to handle situations and problem solve. And then I recently got my certification as a dementia practitioner. So went through a day of classes, and the reality is we can all get certifications, but hopefully we're learning on the job, and just
Right.
we learn a lot just through our experience.
Yeah,
right? Not always a
you've
certification.
interacted with lots of people with those conditions
Yeah.
throughout your career.
Oh yeah, lots of different things, mental health related stuff, different diagnoses, especially dementia. Working with families that are stressed, and yeah.
So this is one of the more difficult things that I try to explain to my own clients, how a care manager can help them.
Right.
So what are some tasks or advice that you help people with?
Well, I think it's, not waiting too late to do things. And I think you probably advise that in your work, right? Don't put off getting those plans done, whether it's legal documents or whether it's thinking about your own aging. Who's going to be the caregiver? I always say, who's the team that you're putting in place? Whether it's something minor, like just somebody picking up your mail when you're in the hospital or handling bills, or who's going to actually be doing the direct care. So I try to have those conversations when I'm assessing clients in the home. I may be focused on a specific issue, but I also want to bring that up and say, okay, well, what's the plan for later?
Right.
Maybe you don't need heavy care now, but if that happens, who's doing what? Can we afford it? So you're talking finances, you're talking about benefits, because some people assume that Medicare is going to pay for everything.
Right.
And we have to definitely do the job of explaining how benefits work and say, no, we got to have some assets and monies to pay for this out of pocket, or have people that are willing to jump in and help out. So, we don't always have that. Maybe a person is what we call a solo ager and never had kids, and all of their siblings have passed on. So I have to think about, is there a neighbor or a person in your church or synagogue or somebody that's going to come forward and be that support?
So the first thing you do is help them identify the issues that might come up.
Yeah. I may be called in for a specific problem, but I'm trying to look at the person holistically and looking at all aspects.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a deep dive.
What are some specific problems that you have helped with in the past?
I've helped with issues with family members, so family dynamics. We see that. I'm sure you see that in your work, where you've got adult children that don't get along, and so there's some infighting. So it may be having a family meeting that I'm doing on Zoom. Maybe they don't live here,
Right.
or if they're in town, we're all getting together and discussing the care of the parent and what role can you play as that caregiver, whether you're long distance or local.
I once had brothers that were taking care of their dad, and one brother wanted dad to be in assisted living, and the other brother wanted him to be home.
Yeah.
And so they fought about that. That's something that you would
I see it a lot. Yeah, I see
work
that.
out for them.
Yeah, just coming up, like, first of all, like, what does the parent want? Sometimes
Right.
these adult children want to jump in and go, hey, this is what I want, or we don't want to use up all those assets, so let's move, because it costs more to have round-the-clock care in the home, right?
Right.
So sometimes people have a vested
own
interest
agenda.
in they have their own agenda, so it's really kind of honing in and saying, okay, well, what does mom or dad want? What have they always talked about your whole life?
Right.
What were their wishes? So I try to really focus on the older adult or client and determine, how do we make this work? I have some clients that want to stay home, and it may not always be viable. There's not the funds, or the home isn't safe.
Right.
I've got a client right now I just got a call on yesterday, and he's got a home with lots of stairs, and he broke a tibia yesterday at a barber appointment. And so
Sounds
it's
painful.
like, how do you we can't go home. So what are we doing in the interim if you can't get into rehab? So it's coming up with that plan quickly sometimes, and I'm calling my colleagues and folks to help out too. So it's jumping in real quick and just taking
that
care of
goes
it.
to the issue that you've been advocating for to end ageism, letting older adults make their own decisions as long as they can.
Exactly.
I think of that movie that's not real politically correct with Clint Eastwood, Gran Torino.
Yeah, that was a great movie.
Where he loses his wife and his son and his daughter-in-law come over and show him the brochures for the assisted living and bring him a telephone with big numbers on it, and he just didn't need or want any of that.
And that does happen, right? Where people are, I think they're thinking they're being helpful and they're trying to do the best they can, but they're not realizing that maybe this person can still make decisions, or they can succeed in their home and still have a lot to give, right?
Right.
We may still want to work. In today's world, we see that just living on Social Security or a pension may not be enough.
Right.
And so you see older adults going back into the workforce. Maybe they're not doing the same job, but they want something part-time, or they want to volunteer and be productive. So we want to give those opportunities. Ideally.
Tell us about the Ageism program that you're involved with.
So I'm part of an initiative that's through the San Antonio Area Foundation under SALSA, or Successfully Aging and Living in San Antonio. And this initiative is called Reframing Aging. And this is an initiative that was created by a group called the Frameworks Institute. They did the research that was of 12,000 people. So it was a huge endeavor. And this is a think tank group that does a lot of research on different social issues like race or age or different things, disabilities. And so we were trained by the Framework Institute. There's a group of us that have been doing this for about 4 years, and we've got some new members. But we go out and speak to the public, whether it be professionals or older adults, church groups. We
on
speak
the radio.
On the radio. We speak on reframing aging and ageism, implicit bias, and also looking at different different narratives that could be used, whether it be in policy writing. We use like a justice narrative, or different narratives like building momentum and different things to try to get people's thinking to change about their own aging and how they work with others.
What are some tips that you can give for how we treat others or how we treat ourselves?
Well, I think it does start with ourselves. So that's called internalized ageism. And it's how do you think about yourself as you're aging? And, what kind of what kind of self-talk do you have, or what do you say to others? So if somebody comes up to you, or maybe you forget their name, you say, I'm having a senior moment. That's a negative. So ideally, you're just saying, hey, at any age, we could forget names, right? We could forget things. We leave the keys in the car. We lose stuff. That happens to any of us as we age. So that would be a tip, is just thinking about your internal language that you have, whether in your mind or when you're speaking to others, but also just how we address older adults. So one thing we're striving for is to maybe stop using even the word senior and use the word older adult. The Framework Institute did a study using different descriptions of aging, and the term senior was actually associated with less competency.
Okay.
The term older adult was seen as a more competent person.
Okay.
So we can't change everything. This is a long-range social change endeavor here. But we're hoping that at some point, even senior centers might think about changing their names at some point. So those are conversations we're having through the Area Foundation, the city of San Antonio, and different groups. We've done some proclamations for the city, like we did one for Adult Protective Services. So we look at language, we look at people's websites even, and say, okay, let's, how can we look at that language you're using and make sure it's more inclusive?
Well, in the legal industry, we use the term elder law.
I know. And that on that scale was not as bad as senior, but it wasn't as good as older adult. But you're not going to change everything, right?
Yeah.
It's just baby steps here. We're trying to just make a difference in whether it be in our workplace, environment.
Well,
and
it's illegal
I
to
know.
discriminate on the basis of
I
age.
know, but it still happens.
Right.
I have a client right now I'm helping pro bono that has degrees and was a scientist and has a hard time finding a job. And I told her maybe it's ageism. So she's
Right.
working 2 part-time jobs and really struggling to make it and paying rent,
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize that the cost today, if you have a mortgage you've had for years, it's great. But if you're someone renting, rents go up. And we
Right.
saw that especially after COVID, everything just kind of skyrocketed. So she's struggling, trying to get her in with the housing authority to get a voucher, but there's wait lists. And I got her with a colleague of mine to review her resume, who my friend is an HR director, been doing HR for years. So trying to look at how she presented herself.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about ageism within the healthcare industry? What are the issues there?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot. I mean, even for myself, when I'm with a client in a doctor's appointment, sometimes they're looking at me and not my client. And so I'm kind of doing this bit like, hey, over here, this is the person, this is the patient.
Right.
You may think I'm the daughter, or maybe they think I'm the power of attorney, and I'm not. I'm an advocate. So I'm expecting that physician addresses the client and asks them questions. Don't ask me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one example we see in my industry. But I think on the bigger scale, we're looking at things like funding, whether it be for causes that affect older adults, things like Alzheimer's and other diseases that particularly affect older adults, heart disease and things like that. Dr. Becca Levy, who wrote a book called Breaking the Age Code, did a lot of studies. And one thing she found in her work was that just having a positive attitude about aging actually can change someone's trajectory in aging. So what she found is you can gain 7.5 years more of life by just having a better attitude. So that's on us, and that's also on the healthcare system, is how do you treat that patient in the hospital? Are you ignoring them? If they can't hear, are you accommodating people? Also, what we see is in research and studies, very few older adults or participants are not always invited to the table. And that's an issue.
Oh.
Because how do you study older adults if you don't have the older adult as a subject?
Right.
So we see that. I think also when it comes to benefits, we see issues with, okay, maybe I'm insured through a private company today, but as I'm transitioning into Medicare, do I actually understand what that entails?
It's so complicated.
It is very complicated. And you know that working in Medicaid planning and all that, like how do people plan for this as they're aging? I turned 65, what does that look like? And what am I getting?
Well, there's the Medicare supplement and Advantage plan agents that sell policies. And I think that there's some good ones out there that give information about what the differences are. But the insurance agency is so heavily regulated, it ties their hands sometimes about what they're allowed to talk about.
Right, which is a disadvantage. Ideally, we don't have books on how to age, right? When you're retiring, what to plan for and to think ahead, right? And think, like we said earlier, Medicare is not going to take care of all of this. So how are you planning financially for your retirement in those years where you may need care? So it's just having those conversations, whether it's you as an attorney or myself as a care manager, for people to be thinking about how they age and how does this work.
Well, when you were talking about how we treat older people, and I thought of the Bible, there's a lot of proverbs about the wisdom of older people and having respect and honor and reverence for them. And so it's in the Bible.
Exactly.
God already thought of these things.
Right. Yeah. All knowing, right? Yeah.
Right. And then there's Oasis, the educational
lifelong learning.
Lifelong learning for people over age 55 or 50.
I believe it's something like that, 55 or 50, yeah.
They have a tutoring program where they pair up, those members with children in schools who just need somebody to read to practice reading.
Right. I actually saw a banner the other day. I was on Grissom Road, and it was Northside Independent School District, and it was encouraging people to sign up with Oasis to do that. And I thought, good.
Right.
And they're such a they're a nonprofit, they're a small entity, but we got to get the word out. So if somebody wants to still be involved, even though they're retired, there's all these opportunities. Whether it's Oasis, just even going to a school district and saying, hey, I'd like to volunteer and read.
Right. At the Shepherd of the Hills, where my kids went to school, they had members of the congregation that would be like a mentor to the classroom.
Oh, that's great. I see that at my church, MacArthur Park Lutheran. So we have a number of members that work, because we have a school that goes through kinder, and they have individuals that read or serve on the board from the church. And they're mostly older adults, so it's pretty nice. Yeah, it's cool.
And so there's organizations that if older people are retired, they've decided to stop working a day job. What my dad had said after he retired was that he wanted to make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah,
and so
great.
He is still thinking about that.
Oh.
I mean, he when he comes across somebody that has a need, then he tries to help, but not in any real organized way yet.
Yeah, it takes time to kind of find where you fit in. I had somebody tell me that the other day. I was at a function, and she's like, I got to find, where my passion is. And I'm like, yeah, we all need to have that group or that organization that we want to support, give our time to, right?
Right.
Yeah. Especially as we age,
Right.
Time is valuable, and you got to decide where you're going to be appreciated, and the skills that you're bringing to the table that could be appreciated. Yeah.
For my in-laws, it has been spending time with their grandchildren. They moved here from New Mexico after they retired, and my father-in-law wasn't necessarily ready to retire, but that was a decision that he made. And so he spent a year or so trying to figure out what he was going to do with his time. And my wife and my sister-in-law quickly gave him projects to do and things to help out with. And then they just want to be with the grandkids wherever they are.
Isn't that nice? Because we don't always get that. We're in a society where people move away, right?
Right.
I remember reading a book years ago called Megatrends, and it was about that, how we're not the agrarian society anymore, but people live on the same property. People move away for jobs, especially if they're in rural communities.
I think that's probably when I recommend care managers the most, is for adult children that live
elsewhere,
far away, and they need to know what's going on with their parents.
Have an eye on the person, because we go into the home, but also into facilities, and being able to report to that power of attorney. As the advocate, you're the one going to the care plan meeting. You're the one kind of holding everybody accountable. If you promise me that my client's going to get a wheelchair or rehab, I'm taking notes and I'm asking the name, and I'm going back to that person and saying, hey, where is that?
I like that, holding them accountable.
And we all should be accountable, even myself. If I promise something, I need to.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily working with bad people or bad organizations, but they're busy.
Exactly.
They're understaffed.
Definitely.
They're overworked, and so you just have to have checks and balances in place.
And it's being part of that team. I don't ever come in and, because I used to run a facility, so I get where they're coming from. It's just a matter of being a part of that team and saying, hey, how can I help? Maybe you're busy, so can I make that call to the doc?
Yeah, back in the olden days, in the 2003 era, my dad's mom was in the nursing home, and my granddad would go and do all that checking up, but he was still working.
Yeah, it's hard.
And so he would hire a caregiver to go in, and they got upset with him for doing that because they said, this is our job. I think that was 20 years ago, so I think...
You still see that. I see that with clients of mine with private sitters in rehab or facilities,
They get upset about it.
Well, I think they feel like, well, you don't trust us, but it's not just that. That person may have been used to having that one-on-one at home. So why would you stop that? If you can afford to do it, some people are going to continue. So.
Well, we've got to wrap up, Jill, but I'm so glad that you could be here to talk with me about what you do, Gray Matters.
Yeah.
How should people contact you if they have questions?
They can call my cell. So I answer my phone, so I have no staff, so it's me you get. It's 210-363-3554 is my cell. And they can also email me at Gray, Gray, Matters, Matters, 64 @gmail. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on different
just
Facebook.
Google.
Just Google
Jill
Gray
Piazzi.
Matters. Yeah, they can find me through my business or my name. But yeah,
Okay,
be
well,
glad
thanks
to
a bunch.
speak to people. Thank you, Todd. Thank you for having me.
Todd Marquardt on Talk Law Radio, and I'll talk to you later.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the Ten Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.